I'm Hanson Hossein. Welcome to Media Space. Our show focuses on the increasingly busy intersection between media and technology. We talk to creative thinkers on the hot-button issues of our digital age. Together, we'll find out how communication technology is changing our lives right now and what might come next. In this episode, Elan Lee is the godfather of something called alternate reality gaming. He's helped figure out how to find, extract, and share adventure from the world around us. He's done so for Steven Spielberg, the Xbox, and Nine Inch Nails. Simply put, Elan is one of those pioneers who's creating a new form of narrative for the 21st century. Some might call it distributive storytelling. I call it mind-blowing. We'll also bring you into our conversation with Elan, use the Twitter hashtag MediaSpace, and we'll track your questions. Elan, welcome.
Thanks. Really
So alternate reality gaming, why is this such a big deal?
Well, first of all, the term alternate reality gaming is
It's cumbersome.
It's kind of terrible. I've heard it called alternate reality gaming. I've heard it called transmedia storytelling. I've heard it called 360 narratives. But basically, what all of that nonsense means is what comes next for the way that we tell stories in the 21st century. And if you think about it, when we start out with a lot of passive forms of storytelling, television, movies, books, they all kind of require you to take a step out of your life. Take this leap of faith, suspend your disbelief, and participate in someone else's story. This new form of storytelling, call it whatever the hell you want, allows you to actually take part and take on one of those roles, or even just sort of let us hijack your life a little bit in order to tell a really good story.
So let's leap right into an example, because this is kind of new probably to a lot of people who are watching. For example, I Love Bees, which you use, I think, as a promotional campaign for, was it for Xbox or Halo, right?
For Halo 2,
right?
Yeah.
And so let's play a little bit of that just to see what this is about. If we can get some audio as well.
A jar of honey containing 9 letters that, when arranged properly, spelled out I Love Bees. But on July 16th, the day when a theatrical trailer for the upcoming Halo 2 was launched nationwide, the pieces fell into place. At the end of the trailer, a quick flash of ilovebees.com sent Xbox fans sprinting for their PCs.
So a subtle little clue like that at the end of a trailer that sends a community of people off searching for the answers to this. It's amazing that something like that can be the spark.
Yeah, I mean, what it all comes down to is, I think everyone wants to believe that they are an extraordinary version of themselves, right? They want to believe that that they're a secret agent, or they're James Bond, or they're a superhero, or they're something just a little bit. They're in on a secret. They're one of the cool kids, right? And so when you do a little tiny, I think we used 14 or 15 frames for that entire blip of I Love Bees. It sent thousands and eventually millions of people running to this website, because they kind of felt like, hey, I know something that you don't. I'm a little bit cooler than the version of me that existed 5 seconds ago. And that's a really empowering a really empowering idea for people.
What do these newly coolified people start doing once they start going to that website?
Well, in the example of I Love Bees, what people did was we thought, we have to tell the story of Halo 2. And the story of Halo 2 is a story about aliens invading the Earth. And Microsoft came to my team and basically said, we want a cultural phenomenon around the story of aliens invading the Earth. And we thought about, okay, aliens invading the Earth, cultural phenomenon. That's actually been done before. That was Orson Welles. That was War of the Worlds, right? These radio broadcasts that fooled the entire planet into thinking aliens were invading. And so we thought, well, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just steal that idea, because that was pretty cool. So we wrote, recorded, directed, and produced a 6-hour radio drama told in the world of Halo 2 about this alien invasion. But then instead of broadcasting it over the radio, we broadcast it over payphones. And so all these people went to the website, found where the next payphone was going to ring, and then they went out and answered the payphone. And suddenly, that version of yourself that was ordinary a few seconds ago is now extraordinary.
And these are payphones across the United States?
Across the world, actually, yeah. All over the place.
That's like a needle in a haystack to me. How do they find these things?
Yeah, well, there were two really interesting ways. One is just by blind luck. I mean, people would be walking down the street, and all of a sudden, a phone next to them would start ringing. And they'd pick it up, and someone would say, oh, thank God you answered. Listen, whatever you do, don't hang up. I need your help. and suddenly they'd invite you into the story. And people gathered around these and started to unravel the mystery and put all the pieces together. The other thing was, on the website, it listed out GPS coordinates of every payphone that was going to ring and what time it was going to ring. Here you can see some of the crazy coordinates. And so people started to recruit their friends and form these little, I don't know, they went out into the world and actually collected the data from these phones, piece by tedious piece, until they could reconstruct the story that they were so rabid to find out more about.
Now, I want to be cooler than I am, but that's not something I would want to do. I mean, it's like, that's a lot of effort. That's putting me out. And I'm thinking, we probably have people who are a little older. This sounds like a great digital generation thing. But older people, like, this is insane. Who wants to follow up physical clues? But then I read an interview with you a few years ago. You said that the origin of ARG might actually be from one of my favorite albums, your Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Absolutely. No, these guys were brilliant. Littered throughout this album was clues to a mystery. Some people call it the Paul is Dead mystery, and it spanned multiple albums. And even looking at this cover, you can see all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Who's in color and who's in black and white, and do these flowers along the bottom spell out a name or not, and on it went. The only thing that this alternate reality game suffered from was no internet. And so it was really hard for audiences to find each other and collaborate and share ideas and make it much bigger. It was these little sparks that kept going off within people in their small communities, but there was never that hive mind that could get activated in order to get that viral spark that needs to happen.
Well, that's interesting. So it's essentially this sort of network phenomenon of the internet that really allows us to take action and do so many things in a very collective way that would not have been possible 40 years ago in the era of Sgt. Pepper.
I think that's absolutely true. But to something you said earlier, a lot of people look at these things and they think, I would never do that. I would never go out in the middle of a hurricane and answer a payphone. I would never leave my house for this kind of fiction. And what we found is that is absolutely true for most people. But the way these things work is you gotta, okay, this is your sort of play at home version. Okay, so you take your hands and you put them like this. And what this forms is this pyramid of audience members. And if you imagine that pyramid cut up into 3 sections, the top section is your top level audience. People who just sit at home, don't want to mess around with this. Maybe they'll read a news story, maybe they'll click on a link, just very, very light touch. There's more of those people than anyone else. So when you think I would never do something like that, you're not alone. Most people would never do something like that. The middle group are the people who actually would click on the link, read a bunch of stories, maybe listen to an audio bit, maybe go into a chat room. There's fewer of them, but they're kind of devoted a little bit to this thing. And that bottom tip of the pyramid are the insanely hardcore people. Those are the guys who are going to go out and answer the phones. They're going to go and do it in costumes. They're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to write songs about it. They are the hardcore players. But here's the cool thing about it. Once you have that pyramid going and those 3 levels of participants, the entertainment value is no longer just the product. The people at the top of the pyramid are watching the people at the bottom of the pyramid.
They're the spectators. I mean, it's actually become an internal spectator sport, essentially.
Exactly right. And slowly the people at the top start to funnel lower and lower down into the more hardcore as they see the insanity going on beneath them.
We're all descending into the rabbit hole.
That's exactly right. And more people are funneling in on the top, and these things grow and grow and grow. And you get
we mentioned men and maybe younger men, but another thing, you talked about this at TEDx Seattle, or event we had earlier this year. And we have a video of you doing this, talking about Kathy's book, and that's something that strikes me that might actually have more of an appeal across genders. Just let's play a little audio from that as well.
Written from the point of view of an 18-year-old girl, and it's her diary. And we wanted to kind of explore what was possible, like how far you could take the publishing model. And so as you flip through the book, Kathy will say things like, "Oh, I'm so upset with my boyfriend. That guy's such a jerk. I'm going to go home and I'm going to tear up his picture and I never want to speak to him again." Turn the page of the book and his actual torn up picture falls out of the book. You can pick up the pieces and put them back together and suddenly you're looking at Kathy's boyfriend. Turn the picture over, his phone number is written on the back and you can call him and hear his voice. Everything in this book was real. All the web pages you could visit, all the email addresses you could actually write to, and all these artifacts would constantly fall out of the book. And we thought this was really interesting, and one of the things we did, we needed people to say, well, all right, Kathy is this 18-year-old girl, so we had to create a Facebook page for her, because what 18-year-old girl doesn't have a Facebook page? So we created a Facebook page, and when you do that, you have to list out a birth date for the character, for the person. And when we did that on Kathy's birthday, someone friended her and wrote happy birthday. And we thought, oh, that's really cool. And a few minutes later, she got another one, and I'm sure you know where this is going. By the end of the day, the thing was just inundated with these happy birthday notes. This was really significant for me. This is characters interacting, these are players, interacting with a fictional character. No one writes to Luke Skywalker and says, hey dude, sorry about your hand.
I love that line. I love this sort of anecdote because, first of all, it shows that there is a much broader appeal than we might allude to earlier. And no one writes to Luke Skywalker and say, sorry, dude, about your hand. You're actually creating a venue for people to express themselves among themselves within these communities.
Yeah, the difference between traditional media and this new form of media, Kathy's book is a great example, is these are stories that happen in your real life, and they are a character in a book could very easily be a friend of yours because that character has a phone number and a web page, and that character can be seen on the street corner where you live if you're out there at the right time.
You're going to a higher level of connectivity and engagement, it feels like.
Yeah, it's certainly the hope. I mean, look, everything we do, we try so hard to make it so that it feels very comfortable to enter these experiences. But no one has to explain to you how to pick up your phone, what to do when your phone rings. No one has to explain to you what happens when you hear the little bing of your inbox. No one has to explain to you what happens when someone comes up to you and says, hi, how are you doing? How was your day? And those are the kinds of experiences that we want to hijack for this new form of storytelling.
Why is story itself? I mean, you're obviously exploring the boundaries of story, but why is story itself so important, especially now?
So I think this was about 2 years ago, right before the Obama campaign really started. And I looked around and my friends were constantly, they'd spent the last 8 years complaining about, we're upset with the government, we don't like how things are going, and no one's listening to us. And I got so furious at them because it was all talk, right? And then the election comes around and no one goes out and does anything about it. And so you ask the importance of storytelling. I thought, well, the easiest way for me to get my friends to do something is to tell a story. And so
why is that? Why do you think a story makes a difference?
Because I think if you have a message, if you want to manipulate someone, and ultimately that's what this project was, if you want to manipulate someone, telling them to do something is almost 100% ineffective. And if you can engage with them, if you can make them feel a connection through characters, through emotion, through conflict.
So the letters that show up here.
Yeah, so this was a clip from CSI that featured our products because it was such an interesting way of telling stories. So what we did was every shirt in the line told a little bit of the story, right? You figure out how to extract a code from a shirt. You fold it in a certain way. You get it warm, you get it cold. We used invisible inks and thermal inks and infrared inks and all this insanity. But if you could extract a code and take it to the website, a movie would start playing. And we made a ton of movies. We made one movie for every shirt in the line. And you put the movies together, it would start telling the story of a band. And in this band, there was one of the members that was murdered under very suspicious circumstances, and now this woman, the band manager, was on the run from the law, and only you can help, and it can only be told through clothing. And you have all these questions, well, why is she on the run? And why can it only be told through clothing? And how do I figure out what happens next? And as you start pulling these pieces together and learn this story, you realize in a very subtle way that you're learning the story of the founding fathers. The lead singer of the band was this guy named Jeff, who was the spokesperson. He had all these amazing messages, but he needed his whole backup band to help him tell the message. Jeff was Thomas Jefferson. The bassist was John Adams. The manager was Lynn, Benjamin Franklin. On and on it went, and the players were learning the story of the founding fathers.
Constitutional history of the United States.
Absolutely. And they were oppressed by their evil record label that wasn't letting them get their message out, and on it went, right? And suddenly, the players of this game started to realize this. They started to realize, hey, this is a giant metaphor for the founding fathers. And then they took the next step for me.
Which was voting?
They voted. They formed voting parties. They signed up for Get Out the Vote, for Rock the Vote. They went door to door. They started recruiting their neighbors. And of course, we had, for my age group, we had record turnout for the last election than we've ever had before. And I like to take 100% full credit for that.
You can take credit. That's great. But what you just described there is storytelling and really creative versions of storytelling leading to ultimately a real world transaction. And especially now, when we're looking at communication and new versions of communication, we're always looking at return on investment.
Yeah.
It's a ton of effort that you put into this new form of storytelling, but you got an incredible return on investment as well. Is that always in your mind when you're thinking about these new platforms?
Yeah, it certainly is. In fact, that's always on my mind when I'm thinking about these new companies. There's very little upside for me in leveraging time for money. If I stop putting time into something, I want to continue to make money. And marketing is not the appropriate venue for that. So started Fourth Wall Studios, specifically to solve that problem, specifically to say, hey, let's build products that are just as cool, just as innovative, and just as interesting. But then when we stop working on them, they continue to make money.
There's these really complicated puzzles. You're creating crop circles and designs in sand, like with Hex 168, that video.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. But you realize that your community, when you put those people together, they can outsmart you. So you've got to be super clever when it comes to figuring these things out.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And in most cases, the audience is so much smarter than we are. I'll tell you, one of my favorite stories is when we started the very first project, which was AI with Steven Spielberg. And we sat down and we plotted out 3 months. We worked for 3 months to plot out 3 months worth of content. And we worked really hard for those 3 months. The campaign was supposed to take 6. So the plan was, we work hard for 3 months. The players get to work for 3 months. And while they're working on that content, we have 3 months to plan out the next 3 months. Easy formula. So we built 3 months worth of content. We released it onto the web. We sat down, we flipped the switch, and they solved all of it. Every single puzzle in the first day.
It's the wisdom of the crowd, I guess.
Yeah,
Right? That's
I mean,
incredible.
they're just so much smarter than we are. So we freaked out and started a company to fix the problem.
Well, you know what? We're going to go to the crowd, or the
All right.
community, right after. We're going to take a break right now for a minute. And when we return, questions from Elan for you. Now, let's take a look at the hashtag MediaSpace Twitter feed. And we've got this really cool thing here, Elan. And here's one. What's next for embedded artifacts for storytelling? You did clothing. What's next?
Well, we're experimenting with quite a few things right now. Our main focus actually right now is browser interactions. And I know it's kind of a bizarre, nebulous term, but the premise behind a clothing company is put on a shirt and you become extraordinary because suddenly your shirt's doing stuff you didn't know it could do. The next big one for us that we're really concentrating hard on is you and I probably browse the web all day, every day. I mean, we're really good at it. We can find the information we want. How do you convert that experience into something extraordinary? How do you embed narrative? How do you embed interaction in this idea of this very banal, boring activity of browsing the internet? So really excited about that one.
We're going to embed clues in the browser or something like that?
I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do, but it's a design I've been working on for a long time and I'm pretty excited about.
What's the one game you played, seen, and said, you know, geez, I wish I'd actually done that game. I wish it had incorporated that narrative into what I've done.
I'm such a huge fan of Portal. Portal is the first game I ever played where it actually really got me on an emotional level. Like I actually cared about I cared more about the antagonist than anyone else because that's the lead character. But every time I watch that game, every time I play that game, every time I watch a friend play that game, I'm always so struck by how deeply you care about what's going to happen next and how to trigger the next event.
But isn't that what storytelling at its best is all about? That emotional connection to what's going on?
Absolutely, but how often do you see that in a video game? It's so rare and so unusual.
Well, it seems like you're taking all this to a much bigger level. You've just moved down to Los Angeles, to Seattle's everlasting regret. Why did you feel that it was important for you to take your businesses south? What's going on in LA that can't happen here in Seattle?
Yeah, well, I've lived in Seattle for 12 years, and 1 month ago I finally moved to LA, which is both exciting and terrifying and regretful all at once. But there's a bunch of television shows that we're working on right now with ABC and NBC, and those need constant attention. There seems to be entire divisions of people in those studios devoted to canceling my products. So I had to make sure I was there just to ensure that those IPs and those ideas have as good a chance as possible. At the same time, we're working on 3 new software projects each one is devoted to infusing story into a different aspect of your life. One is for the cell phone, one is for the browser, which I alluded to earlier, and one is sort of a, we'll call it the glue that pulls everything together. If you have all these different stories that spread out across your life, how do you make sure that you get the right phone call at the right time? How do you make sure that your Facebook wall updates with exactly the right information?
Well, that's it. I mean, all these things you're talking about, these clues, I mean, it's a huge amount of effort. First of all, you've got to think it through. Yeah. You, the designer, have to think about where you're going to put these clues. It probably takes a cast. It sounds like the 10 Commandments here, the cast of thousands to get this thing done.
We only have 3 full-time employees, myself and 2 founding partners, Sean Stewart and Jim Stewartson. And when we work on a project, like we worked on The Watchmen, the movie The Watchmen, and when that came out, we had this crazy website that went up where you could actually talk to a character, talk to Rorschach.
Like live, like this is not some recording.
No, the things you say, he will actually react to. Anything you say, and the things that happen on the website will start to update in real time without you ever touching the mouse or keyboard. And in order to pull that off, we had to ramp up to about 120 people to build this insanity. And so we ramp up and down constantly based on what products are going on. I'm still getting my feet under me in LA and trying to figure out, where we're going to open our new studio and how we're gonna be most productive there.
I mean, are you now going mainstream? Are you hot enough, or are they desperate enough that they need somebody like you to help them redefine storytelling?
Hollywood's a really interesting place right now. The Hollywood model has existed and worked for a really long time. And now that we're starting to see it crumble just the tiniest bit, in movies you certainly see it, all but the very big mainstream movies are having a hard time pulling the profits that they used to pull. And television is having a really hard time getting people to watch the commercials that they used to watch. And so Hollywood's in a very interesting place because they have a lot of people in place who have built their careers on this model that's slowly eroding. And they are reluctant, some of them, I would say, are reluctant to embrace a new model because, holy crap, that's really scary. We've done this thing for so long and it's always worked. Why would we want to change it? And they're finding more and more that they have to. And so I think people like me are very interesting to them because I can very easily show them, hey, here's baby steps. You don't have to tear down your studio. You don't have to reinvent what the motion picture camera is. Here's a little add-on that you can put onto your TV show. Here's a different way to write a script. And slowly we take these baby steps together.
Okay, we've got another question from the Twitter feed. What does Elan have to say about the term storytelling? How do we go beyond, we've heard this a lot because we talk about storytelling a lot here in our program. Yeah. A lot of people say they hear storytelling, it's like once upon a time. It's bedtime stories. How do you explain to them that storytelling is much more than that and that this is going to be sort of the connective tissue of how we communicate in the 21st century?
If you think about stories in general, think about your favorite story, your favorite TV show, your favorite book. It's a series of scenes. All stories are a series of scenes. Scene 1 happens in the office building. Scene 2 happens in the car. Scene 3 happens in the park. And you connect those scenes to each other in order to tell a good story. When I think about storytelling, when I think about the next generation of storytelling, I think about the same exact kinds of stories, those series of scenes. But I think the scenes themselves get to happen in your world. So scene 1 happens on your TV screen. But all of a sudden, a character on the screen walks across the room, picks up a phone to make a phone call, and the cell phone in your pocket starts to ring because he's calling you. So scene 2 happens on your cell phone. Scene 3 might happen in your email inbox. Scene 4 might happen on your Twitter feed. Scene 5 might go back to the television. Round and round it goes, building the same kinds of really good, really compelling stories that we all love, that's sort of wired into our brains to appreciate. It's just now we're actually making use of the world we live in to tell the next generation of stories.
And this is the transmedia. You're going beyond just one media, whether it's just television or film, but actually into other physical realms, essentially.
I believe so. I believe that as we've evolved from the printing press to the motion picture camera to the internet, what's next is not a massive new invention. What's next is now, let's make use of all those amazing things we've got. Let's string them all together and plug them into each other in order to tell the kinds of stories that you and I can visit instead of just passively watch.
You're probably making a lot of people who make a living in the current world a little uncomfortable.
I hope so. I think that it's going to be that lack of comfort that's really going to drive us to try some crazy new things. Because the only way any of us are ever going to figure this stuff out, the only way we're ever going to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work, is to try everything and then hold on to the successes.
Well, I think that's what we recognize, especially in this digital media era, that we're kind of in this throw it at the wall and see what sticks. We have this ability to fail fast, and figure it out fast as well. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I like to say that I'm an expert in this field because I have failed more than anyone else out there. And that's really what it's all about. The only way any of us can figure out what's going to work is just to try it and then hope for the best.
Well, I think that's what we're all doing. I think it's a good way to close out our conversation.
All right.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Tune in again next month online and on air for our next episode of Media Space. And now we're going to leave you with some concluding thoughts on the importance of storytelling from best-selling author Scott Berkun.
One of the most telling inventions in the history of media debuted in 1960. It was called smell-o-vision. Convinced that the next big wave in entertainment would capitalize on an untapped sense, filmmakers designed a system to release 30 different odors during a 2-hour film. It was a complete failure, which today isn't all that surprising. But the lesson here is that technology can be an incredible distraction from what is at the heart of all media: storytelling. The craft of telling a captivating story transcends technology. We know from YouTube that production value is irrelevant. It's the story and how funny, embarrassing, or moving the story is that drives us to watch and share and watch again. But when we get lost in the mediums, the technologies, the trends, and the tools, we forget that those things don't matter if the story we're telling isn't any good. While we do live in an age of surplus information, we still have a shortage of good, well-told stories, or more specifically, good storytellers who can tell them. With today's rate of change, it's wise to look for the things that stay the same. One is our irresistible need for narrative. On TV, in games, and online, we're narrative seekers above everything else. Look carefully at Facebook or a popular blog, and what you'll find is people making and consuming stories. If you want to succeed in the world, start studying what storytellers do and how they do it. Learn to get that right, and the rest will follow. Get distracted by the technologies, and like smell-o-vision, not much else will matter. For Media Space, I'm Scott Berkun.